Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Wedge 52 Gridiron Podcast. I'm your host, Wedge. Today's episode will be the 10-minute report Raiders. For those of you who are unfamiliar, the 10-minute report is where I take 20 minutes of study plus my already established knowledge and wrap it all up into a 10-minute podcast. Before we start today's episode, please make sure you follow me here on Spotify at Wedge 52 Gridiron, as well as on Instagram at the same username. With that being said, let's jump into the 10-minute report on the Las Vegas Raiders. Starting off with the biggest move I would say the Raiders made this offseason was a quarterback situation involving Jimmy Garoppolo. The Raiders decided to move on from Derek Carr, who in 9 seasons with the Raiders within Oakland and Las Vegas, he put up 35,200 yards, 217 touchdowns, and 99 interceptions to go along with a 64.6 completion percentage and a 91.8 rating. His record was 63-80, that is including the regular season, and his 0-1 career record for the playoffs. So those are Derek Carr's numbers. They let him go. He is now a New Orleans Saint. In the meantime, the Raiders picked up Jimmy Garoppolo out of free agency, and they signed him to a 3-year, $73 million deal. And his numbers entering his 10th season, so he's also played for 9 years. They were both rookies in 2014. Jimmy Garoppolo's numbers are 14,300 yards, 87 touchdowns, 42 interceptions to go along with a 67.6% completion percentage and a 99.6 rating. Jimmy Garoppolo's record, including regular season and postseason games that he has started, is 44-19. So obviously, as we hear the numbers, as you guys hear the numbers, the stats for Jimmy Garoppolo are about half as good in terms of yards and touchdowns as Derek Carr's, who they decided to move on from. And, 42 interceptions compared to 99, but much less games played there. But the big indicator, completion percentage, 3%, a noticeable difference, but not drastic. Quarterback rating, 8 points better. Again, noticeable difference, but I would not say drastic in terms of, performance. But the big one is 44-19. That is about 2.5, just over 2 wins to 1 loss, where Jimmy Garoppolo is at about, 3 wins to 4 losses, so 2-1 or 3-4, kind of the record. Jimmy Garoppolo is definitely a better game manager. That's kind of the systems that he's been in so far. So I think it'll be interesting to see him in a system that is a little less reliant on, being schematic and being a system like the New England Patriots offense has always been, and how the 49ers offense has been, especially the past, 4 or 5 years. That Jimmy Garoppolo's been there, that Kyle Shanahan's been there. So that would be interesting to see. I personally don't think they really upgraded. It's definitely a bridge quarterback situation that they have going on right now, as the Raiders have kind of some big question marks in terms of, what the future of their franchise holds, at least right now in the next few years. A lot of big-name players, but still not getting it done, not seeing the postseason success. One of those changes they're trying to make is at quarterback. So one of the big names I'm talking about in terms of, the Raiders' offense specifically is Josh Jacobs. And he has been getting it done throughout his career. In 4 seasons, he has 4,700 rushing yards and 40 rushing touchdowns to go with 1,152 receiving yards. All of that in 4 seasons. But as we've kind of seen the elite running back turmoil that's kind of come across the league, especially the past couple months, but really it's been starting to happen the past few years in terms of running back contracts and, running back, longevity or contractual value based on their, performance. So Josh Jacobs was franchise tagged by the Las Vegas Raiders this offseason, which puts him at, I believe, for a running back at $10.1 million that he will make this season. That is if he decides to play, which Josh Jacobs tweeted bad business not too long ago in terms of, the franchise tag and long-term contract negotiations not really going well, or him not getting what he deserves he should be getting. We're seeing this with other running backs, especially elite talent running backs, such as Josh Jacobs. So Jacobs is definitely disgruntled. It'll be interesting to see if there is no long-term deal, what his status is for training camp and then into the season. The long-term deadline for players and teams to come to an agreement on a long-term extension is July 17th at 4 p.m. Eastern. So that is about a week and a couple days change for the Raiders and Josh Jacobs to work something out. We'll definitely see how that turns out. I'm sure it'll be very populated on the sports media side of things if Josh Jacobs gets paid or not. Last season, he put up some of his best numbers yet, which ultimately, led to him being first-team All-Pro for running back, which he led the league in rushing yards with 1,653 and total scrimmage yards with 2,053. So Josh Jacobs wanting to be, paid more than $10 million and, be compensated for the best, or if not top three, best running backs in the league, especially statistically, at least last season. He wants to be up there. I believe the high end of running back contracts right now is at about $15 million a year, with players such as Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey, and a couple others as well. So moving on to the wide receiver position for the Raiders offense, they obviously have Davante Adams. We all know how good he's been, how good he was in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. And then, coming down to the Raiders, getting traded to the Raiders, and still being able to perform well when Derek Carr was there. There was some speculation that Davante Adams might be upset that they traded Derek Carr or let Derek Carr go because they were old buddies from college. But from what I've seen, it looks like Davante Adams is going to give the coach and give Garoppolo a chance. Throughout his career, he has almost 10,000 yards and 87 touchdowns. The Raiders also have Hunter Renfrow, who's really started to show himself as a number 2 receiver the past couple of seasons, as well as they signed free agent Jakobi Meyers to a 1-year, $4 million deal, who had his best season last year with 800 yards and 6 touchdowns. At the tight end spot, Darren Waller went to the New York Giants, and the Raiders, decided to replace Darren Waller with former Falcons tight end Austin Hooper, as well as draft Michael Mayer out of Notre Dame in the second round of the draft this season. Michael Mayer was potentially the best tight end in this draft class, if not for sure second or third best tight end, depending on who you ask. They do have a little bit of defensive struggles outside of Max Crosby, who has really become one of the elite edge rushers the past few seasons, along with Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, Bosa. He's kind of probably up there second fiddle to those guys right now. He's got 231 tackles, 65 tackles for loss, and 37.5 sacks in his 4 seasons as a Raider. Other than that, they have 33-year-old Chandler Jones at edge, who had his worst season last year. And they did draft rookie Tyree Wilson from Texas Tech, who had 249 tackles, 60 tackles for loss, and 11 and a half sacks in 3 seasons, but did end up injuring his foot last year, but is expected to be healthy for training camp by all of my counts, by the stuff that I've been seeing so far. They definitely have a problem outside at cornerback, which they have basically overhauled their entire cornerback room this season by drafting a cornerback, as well as signing 3 free agents. And they are looking to, help their D-line out, interior D-line especially, throughout the next few years by also drafting 2 other interior D linemen. That takes me over my 10-minute mark for the 10-minute report on the Raiders, which only leaves me with the record prediction for the 2023 season of the Las Vegas Raiders, where I predict they will go 5-13. Thank you guys for listening. Please make sure to follow Wedge52 Gridiron here on Spotify, as well as on Instagram. Please go check out my other episodes on Spotify. Thank you all for listening again. Go Ravens.